Hello and welcome to the Human Happy Hour podcast. My name is Jayson Argento, and I'm here, of course, with Rena Goldman. Today we are joined by Dr. Harville Hendrix and Dr. Helen LaKelly Hunt, pioneers in relationship communication and co-creators of Imago Relationship Theory, through their best-selling books, including Get the Love You Want and their latest, How to Talk with Anyone About Anything. Yeah, well, the first question is, what inspired you to write How to Talk with Anyone About Anything?
Well, there's a long story and a short story about that. So let me give you the short story, since this is an interview. The short story is that, but it's the long story condensed, is that we discovered for couples beginning in 1980 a process that we call dialogue, which became the engine of the Imago couples therapy. And
Well, wait, it became the theme of a book called Getting the Love You Want.
yeah,
I heard this man giving a lecture in Dallas in a garage of a Unitarian church that's packed with cars on Sunday and it's empty on Saturday, but the church has speakers come and give lectures. And a woman invited me to go and hear this man giving a talk about how to stay married. And because I didn't have a partner and she was divorced. So in came Harville Hendrix, and there was a chalkboard. And he said, now, thank you for coming to hear my talk. I've had a realization. You grow up dating, hoping to find someone that you really have fun with, usually of the opposite sex. And then when you go to college, you continue to date. And then suddenly, oh, that's the one I think I'd like to marry. So then you get married, and but you and maybe before finish your degree in college, you're going to be a doctor, you're going to be a businessman, you're going to work for a corporation, you're going to be a banker, you're going to whatever, or a theologian, you want to teach at a college or whatever. And what people don't realize is growing up, their parents tell them, now study hard, be accurate, make good grades. And when they go to college, they're all about being accurate, precise. I am sure of the answer and don't question it because I studied it. And that's called monologue. And so so anyway, what he said was the first date, he said, when you're dating, suddenly you want to you found the person to marry, and that is called romantic attraction. And he put stage 1 romantic attraction on the chalkboard, and then he said everyone in stage 1 ends up in stage 2, power struggle, stage 2. Now if you learn some things in the power struggle, everyone can get to stage 3, real love. And what he unpacks in stage 2 is that people, he was talking about monologue, and what you need to do to have good relationships is dialogue. And so people began to hear his lectures, like this was brand new information, and the crowds were growing. And so I was sort of following him with my friend, and for a while hadn't even met him, but eventually met him in person. And we started dating, and we had 2 dates, and things were going well. But then I said, Harville, what's next? What do you want next? And he said, well, I want a book to be written on what I talk about. I said, oh, well, if you marry me, H.L. Hunt is my father. I have funding from a family-owned business. I said, if you marry me, oh, there isn't a publishing firm, a book publisher good enough in Dallas. Marry me. Let's move to New York. I'll hire an agent. We'll find the best book publisher in New York City. I'll have someone transcribe your lectures, which will be the beginning of a manuscript. And 3 years later, the book Getting the Love You Want came out, and I'm in our New York apartment. The phone rings. It's the Oprah Winfrey studio,
Mhm.
and they wanted Harville on the show. And
Nice.
she took his show and submitted it to the Emmy committee, and it won Oprah her first Emmy. So she had him on 17 times. So the book is real famous.
Wow.
So
Wow,
that's
congratulations. That's really great.
thank you. So that's the origin of dialogue, was in couples work. But about 10 years ago, I just became aware of living with Helen, who is a women's feminist activist, and she's probably among the 2 or 3 most important women in the women's movement.
Well, Seneca Falls of Hall
Yeah,
of
yeah.
Fame inducted me as the founder
Yeah,
of Women's
which is what I just
Philanthropy.
said. She's in the
I'm
Women's
considered
Hall of Fame
the founder.
and in Smithsonian Institute for women's philanthropy. So I'm living with this activist, and I'm seeing she's impacting women across the world. I'm seeing 5 couples, a day, and 30 couples, maybe a
teaching
week.
dialogue to a
And
small
and
percentage of the
and
population.
I'm aware that she's making a change. I have a kind of I've been a kind of an evangelist all my life, and I knew that Imago couples therapy was a different kind of therapy, a cutting edge therapy, bringing dialogue into therapy, which is very different from most couples therapies. But it was like we're cleaning up the mess. We're cleaning up the degree. Therapy is fixing the problem. It's not preventing the problem. And activism is about changing the system. All activism is, in some sense, we need to change the system. Maybe triggered by a symptom like like trafficking, but what we really want is a culture where trafficking just wouldn't occur. So we have to have a different value system. So 10 years ago, well, Helen and I decided, and this is where I'm going to shorten this, so we'll put all our time on it, to take dialogue, extend it from couples therapy into the public world. And so we started by doing massive public workshops, and we eventually moved into corporations. We're in 7 countries across Africa right now in different ways. In Liberia, particularly, the president of Liberia has had his cabinet trained in the dialogue process. So we're
Is not visible in the United States yet.
It was to launch a global social movement. So, but it needed a book because people kept not hearing what we were talking about when we said dialogue. They thought we were talking about another communication theory, and we're not. We're talking about a new way to relate, where instead of relating with vertical monologues, and I talk and you talk and I talk and you talk, one of us listens. And when you start listening to the other one talking, this changes the structure of conversation to dialogue. There are 2 people talking and listening. And we see that as right or wrong, we see that as an axis thing. It moves from vertical to horizontal. The vertical relationships are parallel and competitive. People talking and waiting for you to stop so they can say their point of view or take you down, or you know what goes with parallel monologues. And that's behind all conflict, and all ultimately leading to polarization, which is going on today, and some can lead to violence, and leads to war. That's what war is. It's 2 poles clashing. And what we saw was, if we can change the structure of if we can change the social structure and lift it a little bit. So how do you do that? Well, this is supported by monological talking. And if you start doing dialogical talking, it will change the structures. So we're after changing that. So it needed a book. So we sat around and wondered about what to title this book. Even had a hard time selling the book. It was hard to get publishers to really realize what we were doing, because it is so new. Dialogue has been on the planet only 100 years. So it's not a new way to talk. I mean, it is a new way to talk. Being a new way to talk, it's hard to get people to understand, hard for me to understand it for a long time. So that's why we wrote the book, which was let me finish.
No, I'm interrupting. The word dialogue was in a book.
Mm-hmm.
And Socrates, 330 BC, created Socratic dialogue, and the Greek authorities didn't like it and they put him to death.
Yeah.
But anyway, the word dialogue, only Harville created the sentence stems of dialogue.
Well,
for people.
Yeah, I created the sentence stems, but Martin Buber in 1925 created the concept of dialogue.
Yes.
That's when it showed up
The
as
space.
as a relational process, was in Martin Buber's book, The I Thou. But he didn't have it, he didn't operationalize it, so he didn't know what to do with it. You could read it, think about it, it was brilliant, cutting edge, certainly changing the way we think about the human race.
Yeah, he said, don't treat people like an I, it. We should treat people like an I, thou.
Yeah.
But there were no sentence stems.
So what do you do with this concept? So in the 1980s, we began to develop what Helen was talking about. And once we got that developed, the scholar in me has to look around and see, has anybody done this already? Because I don't want to take credit for something that somebody may have done. And so in doing that research, we found that actually nobody had done the sentence stems and the operationals. But the research took me back to Buber, which is where the research stops. Dialogue showed up in the collective consciousness of less than 100 years ago. So I realized that we were onto something different from conflict resolution or in any other kind of problem solving that had been going on in therapy. We were into something that brought couples to talk to each other rather than at each other. And that's such a simple thing, but it changes couples. They change immediately from being polarized with each other. If you turn them to face each other and help them talk without criticizing each other, teach them how to talk using the sentence stems that Helen's referred to. The structure creates safety in what we call the space between, and the couples begin to relax into connecting. And when that happens, they communicate easily and better and beautifully, and they also have a skill that they can take home from the office. So anyway, that's all. It turned out to be a long answer to the question, but that's the motivation and how the book got into the world. We spent a long time on the title and finally came up with, well, actually, we want everybody to be dialogical. So how to talk with anybody about anything seems to be, and we want it to become global. So that seems to be the title. So that's sort of how it got here.
And this is apparently peak Dennis needs to get into my space time. This is Dennis the cat.
Hi, Dennis. He's beautiful.
Yeah, and he knows it.
And he knows it, yes.
It's either this or he steps on my keyboard or puts his paws in my water. So, but can I ask, so you said a lot.
Goodness, yay, a relationship, a new relationship.
Yes.
So you said a lot of great things there, but I would love it if you could give an example. Like, so can the two of you give an example of what monologue versus dialogue might look like for people to help them understand?
So
Okay.
Rena, am I getting it that you would like Harville and I to give an example of what the dialogue skills might look like?
Yes.
Is that right? And is there more about that?
I mean, well, I think I want people to be able to see like what that looks like versus, I guess, what people normally do.
So
to add to it.
Wait, let me get it clear. So you would like people to see what it would look like as opposed to the way people normally talk. how they normally
Yes.
talk.
Yes.
Is that right?
Mhm.
Yes. And then, and you wanted to say something.
Oh, I think to add to that, like you've said a lot of things like dialogue and monologue and romantic attraction. These are things I've heard a million times. I wanted to know what and to listen instead of waiting to talk. What is different about your method to add to Rena? Like what it so your an example might show what is different.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
So if we got it, you mentioned monologue, dialogue, and that we talk about listening.
Mhm.
What's different about our work than other work
Mhm.
that's out there?
Yes.
Did I get
Yeah.
that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Sure.
Well, I mean, I would say there are sentence
Yeah.
stems. People
And
use.
also she just did a dialogue with you. It was kind of spontaneous, but when
Rather
she
than us doing it, I just did it with
yeah,
you
she just picked up and she mirrored you back, Rena. And then
and
so
said,
that's
"Is
what you
there
do.
more?"
Somebody's talking, you mirror them, and you say, "Did I get it?" Which is accuracy. Did I? Because it's very important to have accuracy. It's interesting how the ear wants to know exactly that you got it exactly. So we say, "And did I get it?" And then so Helen says, and you said, "Yeah." And then she said, "Well, is there more?" So then we go to curiosity. So is there more is curiosity. And that asks you to say, well, there's another sentence or maybe a whole paragraph can come up now. And Helen will then mirror that. And then Jayson, so you became a part of it, became a trilogical at that point instead of just dialogical, which is what it can do. And so you wanted to add something. Helen mirrored you back and asked you, was she getting what you were saying? So that's the process: is that you talk and you talk and somebody listens and they mirror it back. And then the dialogue would be when you finish that round that you would that then I would talk and you would mirror. So you take turns talking and listening and talking and listening. And you do that not to wait so your turn. You do that to engage in the disclosure.
Mm.
Both persons disclosing
Mhm.
is coming up for them as they are in this conversation with you. And Helen and I can do one if you think that would help the listeners see us do it. We can also do a short one to give the structure because there are two more steps to it.
Sure.
One is validation,
Okay.
and the third step is called empathy. So we could do
That's a good one.
that if that would be helpful.
Okay. Can I do a send?
And you want to do send. Let me see if I'm getting this.
Yeah.
You want to do this demo and you want to do the send.
Yes.
Am I getting that?
Yes. But after mine, if you would like to do it,
And after yours, if I want to do it, you'll listen to me. Am I getting that?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So I just met a woman named Rena. I believe that's her name.
You just met a woman named Rena.
Yes.
Yeah.
And she has a cat named Dennis.
Rena has a cat named Dennis.
And our CEO of Quantum Connections, his name is Dennis.
And the CEO of Dennis of Quantum Connections.
Is there anyone in the world that has a cat named Dennis?
Yeah. And so this comes up for you is that's sort of interesting in itself. And does anybody have a cat named Dennis? Am I getting you?
Yeah.
Yeah. So is there more?
It's just so synchronistic
So
that Dennis is going to listen to this.
Yeah.
And there she is loving her cat named Dennis. So she has brought a little joy and laughter into my life this afternoon already. No, Dennis has. We want to give Dennis the credit for it. And then a few minutes ago, I saw him crawling up. She said, well, I hold him because if I don't, he crawls all over. Yeah. He was crawling all over.
And so the more is that Dennis, our CEO, will hear this and he will be probably very amused by it.
Yes.
As you're amused. And what if
Who would name a cat Dennis?
yeah, who would name
What about
me? So you're also wondering who would name a cat Dennis?
It's
Yeah.
very it's a sophisticated name for
A
a cat.
sophisticated name. But there's something that you also said that I don't think I've gotten amplified. You said how synchronistic that is, so that you're seeing this as a synchronous event, not
Yeah.
just a random event.
Yeah.
Am I getting that? Is
Yeah.
there more about that?
No. Yeah,
No.
I'm curious
And you're
about
just curious.
a cat named Dennis.
Yeah, so let me summarize it. So if I'm getting it all, you wanted to talk, and if I want to talk afterwards, I can. And what you wanted to talk about was that Rena, who's interviewer, has a cat on her lap named Dennis, and we have a CEO named Dennis, and that you thought that was very amusing and funny and synchronistic as well. Am I getting that? And that he will see that, and he will be
Amused.
amused by the same thing. Is that a good summary?
Perfect.
It's a
Yes.
perfect
Yes,
summary.
yes.
So let me validate that,
Yeah.
because it makes sense that it makes sense that if you as you were looking at this and you saw a woman, Rena, with a cat named Dennis, and that you associated that to our CEO, whose name is Dennis, it makes sense that you would think about that as both amusing and funny and maybe synchronistic.
Yes.
And that really makes sense.
Mhm.
And I can imagine that when you saw all that, felt all that, that you it looked like, and I could see that you were enjoying that. You were having a lot of fun.
Yes,
Brought you
yeah.
some laughter.
Mhm.
Is that the right feeling?
There's a word that was in the dictionary. It was called solely, SOELLY. And after a while, Webster took it out,
Mhm.
and it was two words. One was silly, and the other was holy.
Mhm.
And I don't know, there was something sort of silly, but also
Okay.
Sort of special.
So
it was silly and special.
So you're adding to that for the feeling that you had is reminded you of solely, that old word about holy and funny being connected.
Yes.
And did I get that?
Yes.
Yeah.
May I say something
Is there more about
before
that?
you do? No, but could,
So you finished.
yes.
Well, thank you for starting it and sharing your experience.
Okay,
And I appreciate it.
yes. May I share something on a
Of
different
course.
topic?
Mhm.
One of the things we do with our couples on our weekend workshop is tell that story about silly and holy. And we encourage on the last day to bring more laughter into their relationships. And and we talk about doing silly things, like bringing home a joke book. Maybe there's a family dinner, or when Harville and I, one time we were stressed and having difficulty in our relationship, and we said, let's do something that makes each other laugh. And we got Groucho Marx glasses, plastic here, a big rubber nose and a mustache. And both of us put them on and told each other jokes while we were wearing Groucho Marx glasses.
So that's a kind of a dialogue. We're doing only one. This is called a one-way sin, and so a dialogue would be, okay, well, thank you for sharing that. Now, I'd like to share something with you, and you mirror that back, and it usually should be about the same topic. Although, if I want to, I can say, I for my responses, I don't really have a response to that. Something else came up for me, and I'd like to do that. And Helen would go through mirroring. Did I get it right? Which is the accuracy check. Then curiosity, is there more about that? Then I would finish, and she would do a summary so that I'm sure she got it all. And then she'd say, I can see how your mind is working. You're not agreeing, and I was not agreeing. We're just seeing how each other's cognition works. And then you go, and I can imagine the feeling, which is the lower brain, that you would have a feeling about that. So empathy is about the feeling. So if we do that, then what I get is her inner world. And if I say something back, she gets my inner world, and you leave it alone. She didn't, and I didn't say to her, well, I don't think that was synchronistic at all. I think that, you know, that would be putting her down and negating her. And you don't need to do that. That's her world. So you leave it alone when somebody gives you their world. And we were talking about things, how this, where and how this might apply. We think this applies across the world, that everybody, every human being has an inner world which is uniquely theirs. But it's different from mine. So one of the human problems is difference. So you are different from me, therefore you have to be somehow criticized, put down, judged, blamed, shamed, whatever, because you're different from me, and I need you to see it my way. We think that's us as human beings, but it is a delusion, because nobody, the brain sees everything uniquely. Nobody sees anything the way another person sees it. In the realm of similarity and the fact that you can recognize, we're all talking about the same cat, but I don't see the cat the way Helen saw the cat. Didn't have the same reaction to the cat that Helen saw. And I can't have that because my psychoneural system registers cats differently from the way Helen's psychoneural system registers cats. And so you put any topic in that, in the space between, you put any topic in here, you talk about it, and you leave that over there, no matter what it is or how different it is from yours. That's just Helen's difference, and nor how different it is from mine. And then that moves you into safety, because you know you can disclose yourself without being put down or evaluated or negated. And but you don't necessarily look for agreement, because agreement is not possible. You look for you look for the difference and then honor the difference. And that's really interesting. It stretches me into another way to think about cats, which I didn't have before. So now my brain is bigger. My concept about cats is bigger because I heard her comment about Rena's cat named Dennis. I didn't, in fact, even hear the name Dennis. So this is, again, the research on the accuracy of listening is 30% on a good day. So we have a 70% distortion rate to start with, because I didn't even hear that was the cat's name. And in fact, I saw another cat that was black go by. I thought that there were two cats. And then I saw this one you were hugging, and I wondered what happened. Was that a delusion? Are there two cats? So I went into my own story about your cats.
How
Yeah.
does a Trump supporter and a Harris supporter have that conversation?
Yes.
Well,
So it would be difficult, but
the thing that I would say is that that you could expect that the polarization now, that the expectation is that very few people can have that because of the negative associations. But what I would like to say about that is what I just said, is that there's the polarization is not based upon any reality. It's simply based on the closing off your mind and objecting to otherness. And otherness is the only thing there is outside of me. Everything else is other. And so if I don't let you in and see your point of view, I don't have to agree with you. I wouldn't have to agree with any political party or any political position, but I need to hear it because you have a rational reason for seeing Trump or Kamala in the way you see them, depending on the way you grew up, on the cultural value system that we live in. Our perception is shaped by our personal experience and by our cultural orientation, cultural value system. We don't consciously know either one of those. We just think our eyes are seeing the truth.
Mhm.
And no, your eyes never see the truth. In fact, there's some people, and I'm among them, says you can't even see a fact because the fact itself is an interpretation. So that what the brain does is interpret through the filter of this bilateral experience, my psychological background, where I was born, how I was treated when I grew up, what I was told about how I have to be,
Mhm.
and the culture I lived in, both of which I didn't reflect on. I just was shaped by my parents and my family, and I was shaped in a culture that said compete, control, be the best, win, and blah, 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 blah. And one day you wind up, running and being the best and chasing and trying to have everything. And some people wake up and say, what is all that about?
Mhm.
Well, it's about what the value system is in the culture of the West.
Mhm.
It's not going on in the Himalayas. The people living in the Himalayan mountains are not competing. They're
Mhm.
living in a different cultural value system, which may be as meaningless as ours, but it's theirs.
Mhm.
But they were shaped by that, and they would see the political polarization through the filter of their background of having lived in the
Mhm.
Himalayas.
Mhm.
So that's the reality we're in. If the closest we can get to it is that all human beings see things uniquely through the filter of their psychological and cultural backgrounds. So they see an interpretation, and they turn the interpretation into a fact, and that's pathological, to take interpretation and turn it into a fact. But it's what Freud called it the psychopathology of everyday life. We all do it. And that's where our problems come from. If we could see things the way other people see them, we could say, well, we don't have to kill you for that.
Mhm.
Let's talk about how, like, I just learned something about cats from Helen. Let's talk about what we can learn from each other with our differences, and then we can I can stretch my mind with new information about cats or about quantum physics or about whatever it is that you have a point of view about politics, about Trump, about Kamala. What I can, because I can't see one of them a certain way. I just can't see it. Oh, so that's how you're seeing that. That's why you're voting that way. In fact, I have, with regard to this conversation, relatives in South Georgia,
Mhm.
that when
Well, how
when I go
relationship-
visit them,
Mhm.
this situation sets up,
Mhm.
and I get to hear it. And my relatives have perfectly logical reason
Mhm.
for voting differently from the way I do.
Mhm.
Absolutely logical.
So may I also respond?
Please.
So the question, a couple has different political votes, opinions about who should be the next president. What the couple needs to do is to be told something about difference. That we begin our workshop saying, and well, let me say to you what we say at the beginning of our workshop, that human beings are part of nature, and nature is filled with difference: wet, dry, hot, cold, sweet, sour, dark, light. So don't expect your partner to be like you. But things often work together. But anyway, what I would say to a couple that are very concerned about the way their spouse is voting is not defend either one or anything, but just say, don't let a political moment in the United States, you all don't understand why each other's voting the way you are. Just don't talk about it and enjoy your relationship. Just leave politics out of the house. And go to the voting booth, do what you do, and don't try to convince the other that, or defend, I'm voting for blah, blah. Anyway, just don't talk about it.
Yeah,
And just
and Helen, let me see if I'm getting this. You're saying that your advice would be to tell couples who are polarized about their
Politics.
about politics, just not to talk about it. So, am I getting that? Is there more about that?
No,
So, could I respond to that?
yes.
So, I would offer an alternative
Oh,
to them.
okay. Mhm.
I would say to them that there are ways that that your relationship is more important than your politics.
Yeah.
And there are
Mhm.
ways you can talk about this, and that it's really perfectly okay to get clear the rationale that you have about your vote,
Mhm.
and accept that rationale as
Mhm.
logical, valid,
Mhm.
and actually good
Yeah.
mental health, and that you each accept the other person,
Oh,
because
that's lovely.
because
That's lovely.
difference
That's lovely.
because let's see, you want to, you've been talking, if you're in a therapy session,
Uh-huh.
you've been talking in here about where you're going to send your kid to college.
Uh-huh.
And you all were all over the world. One wanted the East Coast, one wanted the West Coast.
Uh-huh.
And as you talked about it, you both decided that neither of those colleges make sense. So something new came up, and now you're looking for a college in the north, in the Northwest, in the North Center, the Midwest, around the Chicago area. So as you talked, you began to see each other's point of view, and it shifted yours. The same thing can happen with any topic.
Yeah.
It doesn't. Let me
So,
just finish.
I just
It
want to
doesn't. It
validate.
doesn't have to. Doesn't have to change.
Yeah.
But what you can do is accept
Yeah.
difference,
Yeah.
because that's all
Yeah.
you've got.
So I think Harville's making a great point that if both people just, and I would have it not a verbal conversation, but write
You
down
could do it that way.
the 6 or 8 sentences of why they're voting Democratic, and the 6 or 8 sentences why they're voting Republican. And they give each other the sheet of paper, and they don't need to talk about it.
If they don't want to. Yeah, but they have that option. Yeah.
But do not let it bring stress into the marriage. And I can sure see why it could, but
So anything that's super, super important to you that the other person doesn't agree with, you should just ignore?
well,
Or
with
keep out?
politics, everyone has a right to vote. Now, if it has to do with I don't like your parent, or I don't like, no, I don't what your parents were. I mean, hopefully humans in
Yeah.
the family, we can all learn to live and
Yeah.
respect each other.
Yeah. And
Well,
so,
especially if they learn to dialogue.
and so what you're hearing here is Helen and I have different views about what we would say to couples.
They were voting, they were
that,
having,
about
it was sort of
political
frustrated that,
decisions.
yeah. Mhm.
And I get that you see it, that if it's a polarizing event, like who are you going to vote for? And that's polarizing. That it makes sense to me that the best way to do that to serve your relationship is just, some things don't have to be talked about.
No, I said write down
And
exchange the piece of papers and say, let's not talk about,
And
let's
write
talk
that.
about the things that are enjoyable to
Yeah.
talk about.
And I can see how that would be a sensible thing to do. And so, I'm saying also, I think it's okay to talk, but you need to agree that you're going to have a dialogue about it.
Yeah.
And accept each other's perspective without polarizing around it.
Mhm.
So you can learn each other. So I would propose the conversation. So we have a difference about that. Helen makes sense, because that's less wear and tear on
But
the
there's a both
relationship.
and.
And
There's a
both
both and. I
and
mean, it
I
could be
would,
written down and then they have a conversation. I think
and
that's
I would encourage that they have the
yeah,
conversation.
if they're able to without it falling apart.
Yeah, that's what I said, to do it according to the guidelines of a dialogical process. But to have to have parallel monologues about it is pointless, because you just reinforce your point of view. Dialogue is to enlarge your perspective, because you let another person's world, Helen's world, into mine, my world into Helen's. We both get a bigger piece of the world.
So I have a question
Yeah.
here involving it, because it's not everything that you said sounds logical, and it seems like it, until I get to the point that comes up often where some people are extremely bigoted or racist or have these types of views. And so to me, I'm like, and probably Jayson too, like, right, we're happy to listen to somebody's, you've got different views, and I'm glad, like, and we're interested, and I want to know how you think. But I draw the line when you're spewing hateful, hurtful, bigoted things about another group. So how do you navigate that situation?
The same way. It's just an increased energy. The thing that happens is, see, here's the way the energy goes. If you're spewing hatred and I'm reacting to your spewing hatred, then I'm adding to the negation. I'm adding to the polarization. So no matter what they're saying, the point is to be able to say, let me see if I'm getting this. And you're saying this with great intensity. And I know you really believe that. And I just want to hear it. Can you tell me more about it? And how you got to that point, and where does that come from for you? And what does that mean to you? That you stay with that. This will happen always. If you hold somebody in an authentic mirror, holding their perspective, their energy will decrease. That's been studied and measured. If I hold you you're going at it, and I go back at you, your energy is going to increase. So this I learned in the micro interactions with couples. I see it also on the streets, that when people are marching, the police come out. So the police come out to one energy, comes out to contain another energy. So nothing is happening there except, hey, we got the police to react, and some people get killed, sometimes people get killed, and so forth. To me, that's a pointless exercise. We are after a global social change, but I will never go in the streets and march, because when you go against power, power increases. I want to go underneath power and help everybody at the common level, the dishwasher, you, the children, school teachers, people in the corporate world,
CEOs,
learn how to dialogue.
We have an organization for corporations where
Yeah.
we teach dialogue, so the employees feel seen, heard, and cared about.
So I want to teach the masses the dialogue. Then the masses will send the different people to Congress. Like, I'm not going into the political world. I don't see the political world as solving the human problem. The political world embodies whatever point of view is in Wisconsin or in Florida or whatever, and they send people to Congress to represent their values. So if what you have to have is different people going to Congress, the only way you get that is change the populace in Florida. And if the dialogue could become spread throughout the schools, kids learn it, they grow up and become adults, 10 or 15 years from now, we have a different way to relate. They would send different people to Congress. Maybe then something good could happen. But I still would want to grow the fields. It's like there's a man named Jerry Rifkin who wrote a book called The Empathic Civilization. And I'm been a history buff ever since I went to college. And the short version of this is that and I've loved history, so I've read the history of Western civilization, 2 or 3 different versions of it. All of those versions that I have read have to do with the same theme. Powerful men, usually men, there's 1 or 2 women, have arisen and created powerful forces like armies, and won the battle against, like Rome, and won the battle against other forces, and that moved civilization forward. Jerry Rifkin comes through and rereads history, and he says, actually, the powerful men and the powerful forces destroyed cultures, and where the survival of the culture came from and its rebuilding was from the empathic populations who were the casualties of powerful men. That powerful men and powerful wars and powerful armies have been our problem. And our solution has been the empathic masses, because they had then rebuilt the institutions and got them going again until somebody rose up and destroyed them again. So that was a real lesson to me. And as I've looked around, empathy connects. Empathy helps people survive and thrive. Violence destroys. And that what we need to do is, that's why we're working this as a global social movement called Safe Conversation. Why we want to change the way people talk from this to this everywhere, so that the structures that are supported, the vertical structures, with somebody at the top, somebody at the bottom, go lateral, and then we're all on an equal plane. This is a long world historical process, but somebody's got to do it. So since I'm old enough to have done enough, well, we put about 80 hours a week into trying to get dialogue distributed to the world in different ecosystems. And right now we're working hard on businesses, and we're working with other organizations that want to bring it into their business. We, in some countries, like as I said, in Liberia, where the president wants to bring it to that whole population, because they had a civil war 30 years ago. And that civil war ended in terms of the arms, and the UN sent peacekeeping forces there. Then they pulled out the peacekeeping forces, but did no peacekeeping plans. So the polarization of the two sides is still there, unhealed. And so this president had discovered dialogue before he won the presidency. And when he won, he said, now I have a tool, the tool of the healing of the nation, which is to bring the polarized sides together and to figure out a policy by which he can distribute that across the population. And he's now trained his cabinet in dialogue, and they're building I think they called it a peacekeeping narrative that they're going to begin having all across Liberia. Well, that's only 6 million people. So the ecosystem is not very large. It's not like, America with or Dallas has got more people in it. Well, it's got 4 million people, so almost as many people as Liberia. But Liberia could become a model about how an ecosystem can move from polarization, the healing of the wounds of division, into hearing, connecting, and healing those wounds.
May I connect with something you said earlier
Please.
about the empathic civilization? One of my favorite chapters in the new book is the one on empathy. And that's one of our dialogue sentence stems. When you say, well, I imagine you're feeling, and you're guessing. And then if you don't get it right, but the other person goes, well, actually, this is how I'm feeling. But just to ask how someone is feeling makes someone feel cared about. And then I'll add that after Liberia began to use dialogue, it has now spread throughout the continent. It's in Nairobi. It's and they're building
Kenya, South Africa, and they're building a dialogue institute.
Yeah, and to teach dialogue on the whole continent, and there are corporations on the continent who might be purchasing our Connecting at Work program. Yeah, because it won a Stevie Award, which was the business world goes, whoa, this is so wise. Corporations are going to be more financially productive because employees are going to feel valued.
Yeah, we've finally gotten a little peak of interest in the UN. So we've had one interview there in a panel, and we've gotten a little peak of interest in the Vatican. We're supporting one organization, the Pope supports Scolas,
it's not a
which
little
is about
bit.
youth.
It's not a little bit in Scolas. I mean, Scolas was, do you know the story of Pope Francis?
And that's going to be too
I know
long
a few, but
this point.
Okay, well, basically, the Pope is spending, before he became Pope, he was worried about young people.
Mm-hmm.
And he created an organization called Scholas. He was born in Argentina, and he said, don't tell young people what to do, ask them questions. And when they answer, like, how are you feeling today?
Yeah.
Or anything. And then when they answer, say, is there something I can do about that? And then Scholas spread through a couple other countries, and then he was asked to become the Pope. And Scholas, and he took it, and it was going all around the world. And one day, someone who knows our self-conversation skills told the Pope about dialogue is something teenagers should learn to do. Also, parents should do with their teenagers. So they asked if our dialogue skills could be put into Scholas, and so it's all around the world.
Wow.
So see, our methodology is to spread it laterally,
Mm-hmm.
so that then seeps up into the institutions. The Pope actually doesn't know that he's supporting it, because the papacy is vertical, and the Pope does monologue. There's not much dialogue going on. They recently had this huge meeting, and the final statements were made by the Pope. No, we're not going to ordain women for whatever, as priests or even as deacons. But so that's vertical. He doesn't know that he just supported an input into his organization that wants the organization to go lateral.
He wants
to move from regulatory monarch, because he's a monarch. And he's a regulatory monarch. And monarchs are fine if they were facilitative of the good of all the people, rather than, but vertical monarchs are facilitating of the good of a select group of people.
He still may be that way, but the Scholas program has dialogue.
But that's right. The Scholas program will distribute dialogue throughout 139 countries, which is where Scholas is. So our methodology is to do it laterally to the masses in whatever ecosystem we can get into. And that will then grow, because when people get into dialoguing, they like it and they want it. We've even had kids, 4- and 6-year-old kids taught it, and they insist that their parents mirror them after they learn about mirroring. I remember a little kid said to his mom, "Mommy, mirror me," because parents don't mirror; they have monologues, they talk to the kids. But if parents listen to the kids wouldn't have to rebel. So that's I hope we've dominated this conversation. You let us go, and we just did.
Well, you guys are not. I do not feel like interrupting you is appropriate, to be honest.
Yes. And by the way, we were told
we became monological.
And
give me a microphone.
We were told it would be an hour, and for me, an hour's up, and I have to go somewhere.
Yeah, 2 more minutes. I just have to ask you if you guys have anything you want to plug, and so we can put it in the description.
Yes. So if people are interested in this, go to safeconversations.com.
Okay.
And it'll tell them how they can get on board, either to be trained themselves in a 4-hour life skills workshop, or they can be trained to become a trainer and become a distributor.
It's called Quantum Connections.
Well, it's called both Safe Conversations and quantumconnections.com. We'll get them into it if they want to be a part of this global movement.
Excellent. Wow, fantastic. Thank you very much, Rena. Anything in the last minute?
Yeah.
Thank you so much for being with us. And
this
has been really interesting to learn about this technique and watch you demonstrate it. And and I have to say, actually, when I was asked, is there more? I don't think anyone in life has ever asked me that. So it kind of tripped me out. I was like, oh, what? Is there more? I was not prepared, because the way that people usually dialogue or have conversations is not conducive to that. So I thought that was an interesting moment.
Right. Usually it's okay. Now let me tell you what I think. To shift that to polarizing, to shift that to curiosity. or negating you, like saying, well, let me tell you what I think about that. And to say, is there more about that? Is to bring curiosity in. And that's where the connecting starts.
Mm.
So that question alone is there more? Your response is universal. Now, just think about that. What that means, what a tragic statement that is that when we're talking to people, they're not interested enough to ask us, is there more about what we're saying? Except for therapists who get paid to do that. But see, the whole culture needs to be able to do that. All of humanity needs to be able to do that. Say, tell me about you. Tell me more about you. And so as I ask you that, you will begin then to reveal yourself to me. And I'll get to know who you really are. Up till that point, I'm making you up out of a little tiny bit of data. So therefore, I'm relating to my fantasy of you rather than to your experience of you. And that's like it's simple to say, and I said it glibly, but it's a fundamental, powerful new reality. Just to hear accurately another person and not replace them with your own.
Well, yeah, I agree. Well,
So,
geez. Well, thank you so much for being here.
thank you, Jayson.
I will get
Thank
it
you.
out within the next 2 days.
All right, good. Yeah, I think that before the given what we got to,
Yeah.
that it would be useful in the public conversation.
Sure, definitely.
Yeah.
Thanks a
All
lot.
right. See you down the path.